Ready to get down to business? Join seasoned entrepreneur, community leader, and Army veteran Scott Shalom Klein, who will take you behind the scenes with those who work in America's small business scene and speak with leaders making an impact, creating jobs, and telling their story in entrepreneurship. So let's get down to business. On AM 560, The Answer, here's your host, Shalom Klein.
And indeed, we're all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship and business. We talk all about small business here, and I'm super excited to kick off today's program with a leader who has spent 3 decades at the intersection of technology, mathematics, and high-level management. Our guest is Dalmo Cirne, a professional with 30 years of experience at global powerhouses like Disney. He's the author of the new book, The 4 Streams of Leadership: Transform Yourself into an Overachiever Manager. Dalmo has dedicated his career to helping managers bridge the gap between their teams and the executive suite, facilitating collaboration and driving consistent success. He's here to share his roadmap for professional growth and effective leadership. Welcome to the show, Dalmo.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, it's such an honor. Your book is titled The 4 Streams of Leadership. So let's start with the very basics. Can you walk us through what those 4 streams are and why they are the essential pillars for an overachiever manager?
Absolutely. Many people who make the transition from being an individual contributor into leadership, for example, they end up focusing just in one area. They tend to focus on managing a team or a project, but that's insufficient. What you really want to do is work on those 4 streams, and they are the reservoir. That's where it all begins. Downstream, that's where you manage your team, your projects, and operations. Upstream, that's where you manage, well, your managers. You're not telling them what to do, but there's a lot of communications and planning that needs to take place. Last but not least, you are managing side stream. You're working with peers like product managers, with legal teams, sales team, and so on. Knowing that space, expectations, what needs to be done, that will put you in a position where you're going to be prepared to be successful in a position of leadership.
Dalmo, you spent 3 decades at a giant like Disney. What's the biggest difference in leadership mindset required to move from managing a small team to aligning with top-tier global executives?
There are a few differences, but one of them is the establishment of processes. People tend to have like nervous reactions when you mention the word process, but there's a reason for them, right? You want to establish processes when the product or the service you have is mature enough where you want to obtain reproducible results, right? If you establish too early, then the team doesn't have that flexibility. The product is not really set in stone yet. Well, it never is, but it's not really in its final format. And process is too early, and you compromise the chances of the product being successful, and so on. But if you apply processes too late, what you're doing is you're no longer getting reproducible results because things are always being winged, things are always being done on the fly. So some of the big differences between small and big companies are the number of processes that you have established, where in the system you want to obtain reproducible results, and where you want to invest to be innovative, to come up with something new.
Dalmo, your background's in technology and mathematics. How does a mathematical or logical lens change the way you approach the soft challenges of leadership and human collaboration?
I like to say that mathematics is the language nature speaks. So as you learn math, you're really understanding how systems, how the big picture of things work. It's not about numbers. Sometimes there's a joke that mathematicians feel offended if you put a number in an equation. But mathematics is about understanding big systems, how they interconnect, how they interact, how they function. Translating that into management, it does help because you're always thinking second order. Is not only what that particular system works, but how that interconnects with the entire machinery of what you're building, be that a product, be that a service.
Chatting with Dalmo Cirne, a professional with 30 years of experience in many different organizations, including Disney. He's the author of the new book, The 4 Streams of Leadership: Transform Yourself into an Overachiever Manager. And on that note, in your book, you talk about professional growth. For a listener who feels that they're plateaued, maybe in their management career, which of the 4 streams should they evaluate first to get back on a growth trajectory?
Well, that always begins with the self. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How are you going to set culture of the team? Let's imagine an athlete in high school, and the athlete is doing well, winning competitions, decides to go to state level, then regional, then national, Olympic Games, Olympic records, world records. You see that the ladder keeps just growing and growing and growing. Sometimes you can do some of that yourself. Sometimes you work with other people around you, a group of people, mentors, and so on. So it all begins with yourself. And it doesn't mean that because you are performing at a high level that there's no more growth for you. There's always growth. And that applies not only for you, but your team as well. How do you invest in a high performer to be performing even higher? Is not only working with the low performers, but also equally important is to work with the high performers and bringing them to the next level and the next level and the next level.
Mm-hmm. And we've used this term already several times in our conversation. What does it actually mean to be an overachiever manager in today's landscape? Is it about output, or is it about the quality of the team's culture?
There are two things. Management is not an art. Art doesn't need a criteria to evaluate it. Art is purely emotional. Management is more of a craft. It needs to be evaluated by its output. So first you need to be effective. Some people try to go and be efficient from the beginning, but that usually doesn't work. What you want to do is being able to effectively come up with a product or a service. Then you work on being efficient. Efficient is the ratio of output to input. For example, you come up with a product. Now, can you make that product better, consume less energy, have a higher throughput, and so on, right? Don't focus on being efficient first, because unnecessary energy is going to be applied on thinking of being efficient instead of making the product effective itself.
Mm-hmm. Your former organization, Dalmo, Disney, is known for its incredible focus on user experience. How do you apply customer-centric principles to internal leadership and the way you treat your own employees?
Well, without the employees, without your team, you can't really execute, right? I've been on both sides of this equation of being an individual contributor and then a team leader. And the reason I moved into leadership is because I wanted to build something bigger than I could do it myself. So seeing both perspectives, you begin to understand more about how the team is important, how you bring people to perform at their best level. If someone is not performing well, how do you raise them to be performing at a higher level? If someone is performing already at a higher level, how do you bring that even higher? Once you assemble that team, the products, they reflect that quality. Right? Customers, when they see the service, when they see the product, they notice the craftsmanship that went into that. They pay attention to the details.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally, if a leader wants to start transforming their management style today, what's one overachiever habit they can implement in their very next team meeting?
When you are assigning tasks to a team, make sure that those tasks are fully baked before you assign to people, because if they're not if they're not shovel ready, what happens is they're not able to execute, they get stalled, they get blocked. if you not only being effective in building the tasks, but also be fully complete on what it needs to be executed, you increase the productivity of the team. And that could be like perhaps a 10% more productive in a period of 6 months to a year. You're producing a lot more. And if you are a startup, that can be the difference.
Dalmo, real quick, how can our listeners find your book and get in touch with you?
I would like to invite everyone to go to dalmocirne.com, DALMOCIRNE.com. Get a conversation with me.
Fantastic. Dalmo, thank you so much for joining us. A quick break here and Get Down to Business. We'll be right back.